ICA podcast, a space where we talk with researchers in the field of disability, communication, and media from all over the world to learn more about their work, how they got there, and the ways forward. For this episode, our guest is Muhammad Novsyaroni Umar, who is researching Instagram-based disability activism in Indonesia in his PhD at the University of Sydney, where he also works as a casual academic, teaching and tutoring several topics in communication and media studies.
How are you doing? How is everything in Sydney?
Hi, Shakil. Thank you for having me. Yeah, everything is good. It's raining in Sydney and it's starting to freeze as well. So for Asian like me, it's kind of challenging, especially coming from a tropical country.
Definitely. How are you on campus? Are you living on campus in Sydney, or which part of Sydney are you in?
I live in Forest Lodge. It's like only 10 minutes away from my PhD HDR space. So it's very close
Uh-huh.
by the uni.
Oh, how wonderful. Okay, so I haven't been to Sydney. In fact, it's my like fourth week in Australia. I've just moved here
Oh,
to Perth. Yeah, so I've started my PhD here like quite recently at Carleton University. So I am yet to discover other part of the continent.
yeah.
So have you ever been to Perth,
I
Umar?
haven't been to Perth, but hopefully we'll be in this November for the ANSCA conference. If it's okay to mention another conference.
Definitely, it's okay because I'm also going to be on ANSCA. I hope.
Yay. We're gonna meet.
Yeah. So since it's going to be in Perth, and so like I'm planning to apply. I'm not yet sure if I can make it finally, but I'm hoping to be there. Also, there's going to be a pre-conference of ANSCA. I think you are
Yeah,
aware of it
yeah,
at Carleton. Yeah, I think the main conference is going to be in Murdoch, and the pre-conference is going to be in Carleton.
yes, true.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna have a disability panel as well.
Yes, I'm very excited for that. So, Umar, before we start talking about the field, about critical disability studies and when you started your journey and all this, would it be all right if I ask you to introduce yourself for our audience in your own words instead of me introducing you? I think it's better if you introduce yourself
Yeah,
to
of
our
course.
audience.
Thank you again, Shakil. I hope I pronounced your name right. So my
Perfect.
name is Umar. It's an Arabic name of Umar. I'm a Muslim. And but Aussies call me Uma.
Umar. Okay. Cool.
So feel free to use your own dialect. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I was born and raised in Jeddah, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and I moved to Indonesia when I was 19. So, yeah, I experienced quite a lot in terms of how to adapt as a disability. And I have a degree in media and communications from Universitas Erlangga, and also have career experience as a public relations professional for 5 years, where um, I could channel my energy on culture, on inclusion, and everything else. So yeah, it's great to be here as part of my PhD.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you are currently doing your PhD there at Sydney, or you also perhaps, as so far I'm aware, you are also teaching in the university, aren't you?
Yeah. Sorry,
Hmm.
forgot to add that.
Yeah,
Uh, it's my third year of PhD, and I'll be in my fourth year in the next 2 months in media
wonderful.
communications. And thankfully funded by Indonesia's Ministry of Finance, doing research on Indonesia's disability activism, which involved content creators, disability allies, parents, and many other kinds of disability stakeholders in the country.
Wonderful. So, as you said, Umar, one thing that kind of strikes me is like you were born and raised up in the Middle East, and now you are doing your research on Indonesia, Indonesian disability activism.
Sure.
So, is it any challenging to you, or like why did you decide to work on Indonesia? Why not Saudi Arabia, the country you were born and raised in?
Because I feel like Indonesia's disability activism is much more progressing than the Middle East because I don't think that disability is something how to say something fine to the Middle East. For example, like in Indonesia, we have these organizations emerging on disability, but I don't think that Saudi Arabia, for example, the country where I live, they have this much, in which that Saudi Arabia, from what I know, like the friends that I have here who are also doing PhD in public health, um, they discuss more disability from the medical perspective, but Indonesia is still far from discussing it socially, but we are progressing towards that. But I think, yeah, Middle East is still far from that as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's kind of good aspect of it that you have had experience from different regions, so you can sort of understand the position of the field in like across different regions. As you just said, that disability is perceived differently in Saudi Arabia, and the pattern of disability and the way it is discussed in Indonesia, it's different than Saudi Arabia. So, as you are working into disability studies here in Australia, um, what do you think, like as a disability scholar, um, with lived experience of disability, um, do you think the field in general, disability media or critical disability studies, um, is doing the things that it should do, or it's really doing something impactful? What's your take on that?
In Australia, I think it's very developed already. We have professors, for example, like my supervisor, Jared Goggin, and also Katie Ellis from Curtin.
Wonderful.
Um, It reflected how Australia has been developed in terms of disability media studies. But in my country, in Indonesia, we are still working towards that. And it's really hard to find like media and communication scholars who really work on disability. That's the most challenging part, I think. But here in Australia, for example, we have disability panels like this, and ICA disability, where many Australian scholars take part in it. It's reflecting how Australia is being inclusive, not only socially, but also academically, I think.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that's so great to know that you are working with Gerald Goggin,
Yes.
and Katie Ellis as well. Katie is in Cartin, and Katie is my supervisor. So what you say, it really makes so much sense to me that
Okay.
Katie, Gerald, they're actually doing a great job in terms of critical
Yeah.
disability studies and disability media globally. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, when I was applying for PhD, I also applied to KT.
Uh-huh.
And a week before I do interview with her, I received acceptance from Jared. That's why here I am in
Wonderful.
Sydney. If Kate accepted me earlier, maybe we're together.
Oh yeah. So when did you come to Sydney? Like exactly?
In July 2023, but I received acceptance from Jared in June 2022.
June 2022, and you came on July 2023. Okay, yeah, that would be amazing to see you here in Perth. But I'm still happy that we are working on the same sort of domain, and like it's a small community anyway. Uh, I shouldn't say it's a small community because this community is actually growing. Like we
Yes.
have you, we have Beth from the US. Like I had a chance to talk to Beth also as part of the podcast, and that was amazing. We have like many more scholars in and outside Australia. So that's so amazing to see. So since you started your PhD in 2023, you said, do you see a sort of development of the field and many more people are getting involved within the domain in the past like couple of years? What's your opinion about this, Umar?
Yeah, I think it's a very growing topic and how to say organization as well, that many people are being involved. But honestly, in my experience, it's a bit challenging to find scholars with lived experience like you and I. Shakil, I think.
Yep.
Uh, and as I went to many conferences, it's very limited as well to see scholars with lived experiences. So I think,
Hmm.
not only I think, I hope that many those who have lived experience would have the chance as well, just like us, to experience this equal education, not only in Australia, but in other countries, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Which you just said, it definitely makes so much sense to me. I mean, I think when it comes from people with lived experience, or when disabled people or disabled scholars talk about disability media or critical disability studies, I think the perspective kind of becomes much more I don't know what to say. I don't want to use the word authentic, but it has like an extra layer to it, we could say. So definitely more and more disabled scholars being involved in the field would be eventually helpful for the field. Umar, I'm curious to know a little more about the project that you're working on now. You said it's about disability activism in Indonesia. So, what are your findings so far? I know your PhD project is still ongoing, but so far in the past couple of years, what are the key takeaways from your project that you'd like to share with your audience?
Yeah. So to add on from your previous answer is that by having this lived experience, we have this positionality that we can understand, have a better understanding, and also on how we analyze our findings. Yeah. And then talking about my research. I'd like to give a context that in Indonesia, people with disabilities, just like in other, in the Middle East as well, people with disabilities in Indonesia are still seen differently, as somebody else. And then we are also seen through the medical perspective as well. But then thankfully, we have these organizations and activists who start to um, work on disability inclusion, which is part of my thesis. So my research is on Instagram. So I looked at how these disability activists and organizations try to portray disability, because the current portrayal in Indonesia was mostly by the governments, which still seen the disability as those pitiful creators, and we are seen as someone who are underprivileged because of our condition, which in fact we have this resilience, we have the empowerment through these organizations and activists. And the findings from my research, one of the most important thing is that the portrayal is shifting from the sad, pitiful, um, underprivileged perspectives into a more person-first perspective, which shows resilience with a little bit of vulnerability, of course, to tell the audience that yes, we have disabilities, we have these challenges, but we also have the equal rights. We can pursue education, we can work equally just like anybody else, and we also have these basic rights like health, as simple as health, things like that. And it is fulfilling to see how the parents with children with special needs, for example, they try not only their best to raise their children, but also empower other parents that their children have the same rights. So it's very fulfilling for me.
Yeah,
And
definitely, definitely. What you said is very meaningful. And one thing that comes to my mind while listening to your project initial findings is like um, most of the time, it's not only about critical disability studies or disability media,
yes,
but other academic fields also. Most of the time, we only get to hear the global north perspective, and scholars from the global north are trying to sort of, talk about their experiences. But like, as we talk about decolonizing our bibliography, I think this particular aspect of your project where you being someone from the global uh,
South.
South is also, trying to talk about your experience and trying to analyze the situation from your region. These are very, very important contribution to academia, and like not only for decolonizing the bibliography, but also to sort of get new perspectives on disability and the field that you're working on.
A new essential resource is now available for students and researchers across media studies, sociology, and disability studies. Disability, Society, and Culture: Understanding Models of Disability offers a clear and accessible introduction to critical disability studies. It was co-edited by Katie Ellis, a member of the Working Group for Disability at ICA, and a guest in the previous episode of this podcast. The book unpacks 7 foundational models, from the medical and tragedy models to the social, cultural, human rights, affirmation, and critical disability studies approaches. Designed with the students in mind, it addresses common challenges in learning these concepts and provides a solid foundation for further study. Released recently on July 26, this interdisciplinary text is co-authored by a team of leading scholars. Check if your university library provides access, or visit the Routledge website to learn more.
I would like to ask you, like, when did you start working on disability studies, and when did you think that this is going to be your field and you will be pursuing your PhD later into that field? When was the start?
And honestly, I've been working on this, like, as I mentioned, since I started my PhD actually. But then I have this sense of belonging into the scholars. I've been wanted to work on disability studies since my master's in 2020, but then it was challenging to find the right supervisor for me at my university that really work on disability, and that's why I just written some piece of journals on disability in 2022, but then officially starting this disability studies in 2023. Yes.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think your journey and my journey kind of uh, match in that regard, because I myself was also interested in working in disability media. I was in Turkey, by the way. I did my undergrad and master's from Turkey and Czech Republic, Prague. Back there, it was actually hard to find someone who works exclusively on disability media or critical disability studies as a supervisor. So that was probably the reason I didn't quite work directly on disability media during my master's, but I always had that back in my mind, and I started sort of working on a couple of papers and did my independent research on a couple of things that are related to disability media. And then that's when I came to know about Katie, about Gerald, and about Beth, and all other scholars, the leading scholars into that field. And so glad that later I could join ICA in one of their pre-conferences, and that's when I came to know about you, about Val, and about all other fellow scholars, those who are almost at the initial stage of their career. So, what do you think about ICA Disability Working Group, Umar? And please tell us more about your involvement with ICA.
Yeah, I think it's a very great working group, of course. And I think I joined in 2024 when ICA was hosted by Gold Coast, I mean, yeah. So I had an opportunity to be a chair. Yeah, I chaired one of the sessions, and then I presented as well in the main conference. And then the last year I presented at pre and main, but I made it online because I couldn't travel. Yeah, with my physical disability, it is very challenging to travel, especially with the back pain and everything else. Yeah,
Hmm.
and then I've got to met Katie, where I told her that I was the one who applied for Curtin but canceled. Yeah, and then met many other scholars with amazing research, and it's very fulfilling with for me because, as I mentioned, that it's very hard to find this kind of scholars in my country that work on disability from the media and communication perspective, and especially um, listening to more research in relation to critical disability studies. So yeah, it's a very amazing opportunity to have to talk to you now. It's amazing for me.
Definitely, definitely. It kind of gives me a sense of belonging, as you just said, like when I talk to other like fellow disability scholars, those who are like leading scholars, they're there. But then again, like when I get to meet you and people like you who are trying to take the field ahead, and it's so inspiring and it feels so great. Umar, thank you very much for sharing your experience with ICA as well. Now, I'd like to ask you about critical disability studies, about the field a bit. Like, what does critical disability studies mean to you?
Okay, as an individual who's coming from a country that sees disability more medically, I think this critical disability studies is really important to myself to see disability more broadly, especially from the social perspective, understanding that disability is not should not be seen as a limitation, should not be only seen as a challenge that comes from the individual, but also something that is shaped by the social, cultural, and political forces. And I think it's more about how we challenge the dominant ideas that view disability as something, as a problem, as a disease, as an impairment that need to be fixed or cured. And instead, we have to focus on, just like my research, on representation, who represents whom and whose voice are being heard. So yeah, curricular disability studies emphasizes more on lived experience as a form of knowledge, and that way we can contribute to the society. And as for myself, I use it as a cultural and communicative tool, especially within the digital media spaces. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Umar. Thank you very much. And since you are also teaching now at the university, and I'm sure you have many students, what do you see among your students? Like, are they at all interested in critical disability studies, or what's their, impression like when it comes to the field that you are working on or researching on?
I should be honest, that not many students, so I teach like mostly 4, 5 classes from both bachelor's and master's, but I can say that those interested in disability studies, especially disability issues, are very limited. So I teach this unit on social media communication where we're discussing social issues, social change, things like that. But not many students are very interested in disability. They are more into, when discussing marginalized communities, they are more into like mothers, LGBTQ plus communities and things like that. But then I teach this introduction to media studies for bachelor's degree, and I got one student came to me at the end of class. She's from India, and she said, "Oh, are you the Umar that written this paper on self-representation for disabilities?" I
Wow.
said, "Yes." Oh, thank you so much for writing that. That was amazing. That was inspiring. And yeah, I shed my tears. So I was so thankful that finally there's like one student that is really not only interested in my paper, but also interested in the whole concept of the disability media research itself. So yeah,
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, that I'm sure that feels great. Like as a researcher, when you are putting so much time into something, you are coming up with some findings, you are publishing a paper, then you go to the university you teach, and one of your student comes up and says that they read your paper and they were kind of moved by what you read. So that's an amazing feeling. I can
very
imagine, Umar.
fulfilling.
Yeah, wonderful. So, uh, yeah, What do you think about the work that you do? Like when you publish something, when you put something out there, like some scholarly work, when you do them and when they're published, how do you feel about that? Like, I'm just curious to know, like, how do you see Umar as a scholar? And when Umar as a scholar publishes something or teaches something, or what's your motivation for the scholarly work that you do?
Yeah, my motivation is more about sharing more about my country, Indonesia, more about disability communities in Indonesia. And what I'm trying to do is that to share more perspective, more voices. I'm trying to, just like in my research that I'm involving like 70 participants across 8 provinces, I'm trying to give them voices that are not really heard academically. So that's what I'm trying to do. And in terms of writing itself, I should be honest that I haven't had like produced a lot of work, but like I think some book chapters already. But then yeah, still working on that, of course, and trying to represent more Indonesian scholars to really focus on disability, and especially in the field of disability activism and disability creation, content creation, and sort of things like that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing this, Umar. So this kind of leads me to my next question, which is like you already gave a bit of answer to the question, but then again, I would like to ask, like, apart from your PhD project that is on Indonesian disability activism, is there anything else that you're working on currently, which has to do with disability media or critical disability studies?
Yeah, so my PhD thesis is actually very broad, and I'm currently working on the disability content creation itself. And one finding that I think is important is to consider how disability is being a considering factor in content creation. Social media platforms always demand for a consistency. You have to post lots of content to be seen, to get lots of views and being favored by the algorithms. But then we forgot that these people are humans, and especially those with disabilities have this kind of challenges. For example, there is one participant that has a rare disease where she has this invisible disability that she looks fine physically, but then she has this internal pain that people could not feel. And she said that my disability is disabling me from making content. I wanted to make content, but then I am being disabled by my disability. So this is something
Mm.
that the platforms should hear, that there are people who need to be seen, but they don't have any choice to make content consistently.
Definitely, definitely. I totally agree with you, Umar, because one of my recent works, which was on disability podcasters, I interviewed Hannah, one of the, disability podcasters and disabled podcasters at the same time from the UK. And Hannah also sort of highlighted the same sort of experience that she had, like the platforms, for example, Spotify or the global giant platforms for like, podcasts. They have like as you just said, the algorithms, someone has to keep posting in a regular basis, and then the monetization policy, it's sort of it's a unified policy, which is like one size fits all sort of approach. It kind of promotes. So I think what you just said, it makes so much sense to me. The platforms should introduce something, something that accommodates the need of disabled creators as well, if the platforms at all think about the democratization of mediascape. So that's a wonderful finding. And what's your suggestion in this regard to the platform, Soma? Like, how could we go about this sort of disparity which is created by algorithms? Because algorithms are in a way supporting the ableist sort of norm, isn't it so?
Yeah, I think it's more about having balance because when it comes to social media, especially in my country, the environment is more about something dumb. It's more like dance challenges and then just viral sounds with no value at all. So I think it should have balance because I think up to now, like social media in my country is more like a tool that doesn't make people being inspiring or someone being how to say educative. So it's more about being an entertainment. So people are making themselves look fool, look dumb just to get likes, just to get views and algorithms, things like that. So I believe that social media should be a place with balance that we can laugh, we can get jokes and humors, but at the same time, we can get inspired by those people, particularly those with disabilities who have their efforts to show themselves, to self-represent themselves, but then this algorithm kind of muted their dreams and their aspirations as those with different or those with how to say challenges. Yeah,
Definitely. Like if the social media platforms, which you just said, if they had like a
Alan.
spatial policy or a more streamlined monetization policy, which kind of doesn't maybe support their algorithmic um, sort of pattern, I think more and more disabled creators would be interested to self-represent, as you just said. Isn't it so, Mar?
Yes, true.
Definitely.
And especially regarding the monetization, yeah, it really needs a consistent pattern of content creation. So, what I saw, especially on Facebook, that these mothers try to make crazy, dumb videos just to make themselves funny and then get likes, views, and also sometimes they just share unimportant things just to get the how to say just to get the consistency pattern from these platforms. So I believe that it should be quality over quantity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely so. Definitely so. Um, Thank you, Umar, for your insights on such an important issue. And that's so good to know that you are working on this, the social media activism. And we are looking forward to reading more about your findings from this work, which are very important.
Disability is a critical and growing area of inquiry in communication and media studies, yet ICA currently has no dedicated interest group on the subject. We are seeking to change that. Our group of scholars has submitted a petition to establish a new interest group focused on disability in communication. This group would be open to all ICA members, and we aim to integrate disability studies more deeply across the association's divisions and interest groups. Our field intersects with representation, activism, technology, policy, identity, health, and popular culture, aside from critically reflecting and proposing methodologies for truly inclusive research across the discipline of communication. We are submitting our formal application this November, but first we need your support. If you have an ICA membership, please visit the link in our bio, log in, and add your signature. And feel free to share this initiative with your colleagues. We truly appreciate your support.
I then wanted to ask you about like the inclusive communication. How far do you think that the world has progressed in terms of inclusive communication, Umar?
Oh, it's a very challenging question, I think. It really depends on the context. If it's Australia, so I believe that Australia is very developed in terms of inclusivity. For example, when you since I lived in Australia like nearly 3 years, I saw like posters in the bus stop or in some places that shows poster about Valentine's Day, for example, in February, and then the model is someone in a wheelchair.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
that's how inclusion is being communicated. Because when I did my research in Indonesia, the government thought that we need to make an exclusive content to educate disability, which in my research, I found that the most important thing to do is to integrate, to involve disability as an integral part of the whole community instead of making a segregated post about disability only. So that's how inclusion should be communicated. And yeah, I believe that my country, Indonesia, especially, should learn from Australia in terms how they not only include the people with disabilities, but they communicate inclusion as a whole concept. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very insightful thing which you just shared because I myself have noticed the same sort of pattern because I was in Turkey for my undergrad master's, then I went to Prague, Czech Republic for a semester. There also I saw something like that. Like I saw models on wheelchair. Then I went to Berlin for Global Disability Summit the other year, and there also I saw some of the models which were like wheelchair users. So it kind of felt great. It kind of felt um, it felt really nice when you see someone like you being represented in those
Yeah.
sort of sectors. Definitely so. And then like when you just said about that aspect that some countries should learn something from other countries. On this point, I'd like to ask you, um, do you think disability and the meaning of disability and discourses around disability in Indonesia is different than how disability is perceived or way disability is defined in Australia, and how important this cultural context is to you?
Yeah, yeah. As I mentioned earlier, how disability in Indonesia is still seen as someone little, I mean like a second level citizen, for
Hmm.
example. So we don't really have NDIS, for example, like in Australia, things like that.
Hmm.
And how the government is providing like funding for people with disabilities. We are still far from that. Yeah. So yeah, I think understanding the cultural context is important. And for example, like in Indonesia, we still see disability as form of sin of their parents. That's why they get these children with disabilities. Which in Australia, I believe it's not. When I presented my research to all my three Australian supervisors, they felt amazed because, oh, I didn't know that disability is being discussed like this in other countries. Uh,
Yep.
that's more perspective to that. Um, yeah, and in Australia, I believe that disability is not seen as someone different, and it's reflected in how we have the demonstration on the NDIS fraud, which
Hmm.
reflected how this country really cared about the marginalized communities, which, yeah, Indonesia should really learn to that.
Hmm. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Umar. It was a very engaging discussion with you and very insightful for me. I got many perspectives. I truly enjoyed talking to you. We are almost to an end of our episode today, but I'd like to ask you like two more questions, and then I promise we'll end it. Um, do you think there has been enough collaboration between academia and industry? Because like as a researcher yourself, you are coming up with suggestions or with recommendations or with findings which could be really important for industry. So, do you see that communication or that collaboration between academia and industry? And if not, what could we do about that?
Again, it really depends on the context. I'm not sure about Australia because I haven't studied this in, yeah, in Australia, but in my country, this is something that is yet to be made because we just have a new law. It's like 2, 3 years ago that the government set a rule that a company should have like at least 1% representation of disability employees. But I don't think that the collaboration between this industry and academia is something that is very high at the moment in Indonesia. But what I've seen here, again, it's because that we don't have enough disability scholars that can provide this to the companies. But then in terms of activisms, there have been organizations that are involved in my research that have been working on creating more inclusive workplace. For example, like Koneksi Indonesia Inclusive or Konekin that have been providing inclusive workshops for companies, for HRs on how they can hire these employees with disabilities and how they can provide an inclusive workplace as well, and how to prevent exclusion and bullying um, to the disability employees, but also to foster this kind of inclusion where everyone, not only people with disabilities, are being heard. So um, in my research, I also found that bullying and this kind of exclusion happens because those who are not who don't have disabilities should listen, should understand the needs of people with disabilities while their needs are not being heard. So inclusion means that everyone, regardless their condition and disability, should be heard. Yeah, that's
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you very much, Umar. And the last question for you is, as a disability media scholar, what advice would you give to those hoping to pursue the same path? Yeah.
yeah. I think we should engage seriously by contributing to the theory, of course, the curricular disability studies, and find the gaps within the theory and how we can balance the voices, not only the lived experience, but also how we can contribute into the analysis as well. And then be someone that can pursue the interdisciplinary analysis, for example, like being adaptable and flexible in terms of research, because when it comes to disability research, it is something evolving, and what we are planning might be very different with what is happening on the ground. So be ready with that kind of challenge. And of course, stay grounded, because disability research is often connected to people's lives and rights. So thinking about the ethics and involving these people with disabilities, and also discussing their representation and collaboration um, should be balanced. And finally, I think listening to disability voices means that listening not only them as the research subjects as part of your research, but also how we can change their voice into something meaningful academically, especially, and seeing them as not an object again, but ethical representation of disability should be maintained. So that's my answer. Thank you, Shakil.
This was the fourth episode of the Disability at ICA podcast, brought to you by the Working Group on Disability, Communication and Media at ICA. You can find all the episodes of this show on our website, icadisability.com. My name is Valquiria Ramos Obregón, and I've been an assistant producer of this episode, alongside Hwee Jace. Production, conduction, and edition was in charge of Shakil, Reja, Efti. The background music was downloaded from YouTube Studio and created by the Mini Vandals. We hope to see you in our in-person or virtual events. Have a nice day!